Okay, there have been a lot of games on the Battle of Gettysburg, and two of my favorites are the 1977 edition of Gettysburg by Avalon Hill, which included 3 games in the box, a basic, intermediate, and advanced game. And my favorite is the intermediate game. And then there's this other game called Gettysburg, Lee's Greatest Gamble, and it appeared in Command magazine. And these two are my 2 favorite games on the Battle of Gettysburg. Now, I have done introductory videos on these 2 games before, and a replay of the 77 edition. But I thought it's about time I gave some attention to this game, which is one of my favorite on the Battle of Gettysburg. So that's what we're going to do here, do a replay of the first day of Gettysburg, Lee's Greatest Gamble. Now, I might have to break up this replay into a couple of videos. Replays tend to be kind of long, and I like to keep volumes short. So let's take a look at the board, and then we'll get right into the replay. One of the reasons I like this version of Gettysburg is the board. It's very wide. It travels or shows much of the East Cavalry battlefield, which a lot of Gettysburg games don't show. We're used to the old north-south orientation, of course, showing you the edges where the Tinytown Road, Emmitsburg Road, where the Union troops come in. And we're all used to that classic setup of Devon and Gamble setting up west of the town, and Heath's division coming in on the Cashtown Pike. So let's plunge right into the replay, and I'll make some comments on the rules as we go along. Okay, the game always begins with a command-control die roll, which we'll do for Robert E. Lee, and he rolls a 10. And the 10 is greater than Robert E. Lee's command range, which is 6 to 8, which means that the Confederate Army is in attack mode, which means there are no restrictions, and the units can attack. So let's follow the move of the 2 Confederate brigades as they come on the board. Okay, Davis and Archer start on hex 1234, and they have a movement factor of 4. And most of the terrain around Gettysburg is gently rolling hills, so it isn't a great impediment to infantry to move. So they'll go up the pike, 1, 2, 3, 4, spread out a little bit, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's the Confederate move. So the Union will now move, Devon and Gamble, and their move begins with a command-control die roll also. Let's see how that goes. Okay, Meade has a command span between 7 and 9. They roll, and he gets a 3, and that is not a good number at all. That number is well below his command span. In fact, it's below his panic level, which means the Union is technically in a panic state, and that's a state you don't want to be in. When that occurs, the enemy player has the chance to move some of your units as you move each unit. So, let's see what happens. The Confederate then rolls 1 die, and he gets a 1, which means he's allowed to attempt to move 1 enemy unit when the Union player does so. So let's see what the Union player does. The Union player wants to fall back before the infantry brigades of Davis and Archer anyway. So he wants to move back Devon. And the Confederate then will roll for a panic roll and see what he gets. And he rolls a 2, which means he does gain control of Devon, which means that the Confederate player can actually move Devon's units. Now, I should have clarified there. I said Devon units, I meant the Devon unit, singular. So the Confederate can actually make Devon's unit attack. He can do all kinds of things, but I'm going to play it sort of semi-historically, realistically. Devon would fall back, and that's what I will have him do. 1, 2, 3, 4. And Gamble will do the same. 1, 2, 3, 4. So the Union got a little unlucky there, but didn't really do much harm. So that's the end of turn 1. On to turn 2. Okay, turn 2, the Confederate still has to do a command-control die roll, which he does, and he rolls a 7, which is within Lee's command span, and that means that the Army is in restricted mode. Now, in restricted mode, generally you can't move adjacent to enemy infantry units, so this doesn't harm Lee's Army in any way, shape, or form right now. Also on the second turn, a new unit comes on the edge of the board, Pegram's Battalion, and we'll catch the action after I've moved all of the Confederate units. Now some new rules could come into play here because Pegram is actually far enough to qualify as a hidden movement unit. And there are advantages to doing that. I won't do that right now because I feel that they're still too close to Devon and Gamble. But as we'll soon see, there are great advantages to having the hidden movement counters. But for now, I'll just move the Confederate brigades forward. Okay, not too much happening there. That's the end of the Confederate turn 2. And we'll now roll for the Union turn, the command roll. Command roll is 11, which is above Meade's command range, which is 7 through 9, which means the Union is now in attack mode. Now, he gets some units also, Meredith and Cutler at the edge of the board, and now we can use some of those hidden movement rules, and I'll explain how those work. Okay, the brigades of Meredith and Cutler come on the edge of the board here from the Emmitsburg town, and because they're so far away from the Confederate units and technically can't be seen, they get to replace these two units with one of these hidden movement counters. And notice that they move 6. That's one of the reasons why you'll want to use these counters. Now this flip side is a generic number to identify the unit, and so it's number 5. So we'll take Meredith and Cutler and put them on the hidden movement chart number 5 over here. So you gain some hidden movement status and keep the Confederates in the dark. In a 2-player game, this can be pretty critical. And we'll follow up the action after Devon and Gamble have moved. Okay, this is after the Union have moved. We know that Meredith and Cutler are actually in this hidden movement counter. They made it up to the Peach Orchard. Meanwhile, Devon and Gamble, feeling hard-pressed, have fallen back to Seminary Ridge. Now, they have some big decisions next turn, whether to hold Seminary Ridge, fight, or withdraw again. I might point out that winning this game is mainly by casualties. There isn't a lot of points for victory point hexes or anything like that. Lee can win big by getting his supply train off of the Baltimore Pike, but at this point that's a little bit academic. So that's the end of turn 2. Let's see what the Confederates can do for turn 3. Once again, the Confederates have to do a command control die roll. They do that at the beginning of every turn. And they roll a 12, which is terrific for Lee. The Confederates are in full attack mode still. Plus they have some new units coming on the edge of the board here. 2 more brigades and 2 more artillery battalions. Now, they're far enough from the front that I'm going to make hidden movement counters for those, and we'll pick up the action after I've moved all of the Confederate units. Okay, that's the action after the Confederates have moved for turn 3. They're moving boldly forward. They're not afraid of Devon and Gamble. And note that the hidden movement unit here is still hidden. It's very close to the Union, but it is blocked by McPherson's Ridge, so it still qualifies as a hidden unit and can remain so. And again, you'd put the units there on the hidden movement chart, so the Union player technically would know exactly what units there are. So, we're now doing the Union turn 3. He gets some units too, I believe. Yes, Paul and Baxter and some artillery. Let's see what their command die rolls are first. Okay, Meade has to do a command control die roll, which he does. And he rolls a 10, which is kind of good for Meade. It's in the attack mode. But the Union player's got some big decisions here. Some pretty big decisions. It'd be nice to hold Seminary Ridge, but even within the restrictions of the Confederate movement, it's going to be a bit tricky. There's a heck of a lot of units in the immediate vicinity. I'll have to think on this. Devon and Gamble just may have to fall back again. And then we'll move up the Union units, which are on the edge of the board, and they'll be creating a bunch of hidden movement units too. So let's pick up the action after I've moved all the Union troops. Okay, the Union player decided to play it safe with Devon and Gamble. They fell back, but at the same time Meredith and Cutler came up and are defending just at the edge of the town. Meanwhile, more reinforcements have reached the Peach Orchard, so it'll now be the Confederate that has some decisions to make for turn 4. So the battle is going not quite historical, because the Union have fallen back faster than Buford historically did, so it'll be interesting to see what happens here. Okay, the Confederate player decided to not play it too rash. he deployed all of Heath's division in a line opposite the Union line, and he's bolstered it with artillery. Now the artillery in this game is kind of neat too. I like the way it works. You can move or bombard, and after you've moved, you technically flip the unit over to show that it's been fired or moved. I won't do that right now since there's no combat and not much is happening. But you have to set up your artillery. You just can't move and fire in the same turn. So that's kind of a neat rule. Alright, so we're doing the Union turn now for turn 4. But let's see what kind of command die roll they get. Okay, Meade rolled a 5, and that's not too good. That's the passive state. Now, when an army is in the passive state, you can't create hidden movement units, but you can actually move them. You still can't go adjacent to enemy infantry. Not that the Union would be attacking at this point, but he's going to have to deploy very carefully, and let's see if he can slow down those Confederates. So we'll pick up the action after the Union have moved. Okay, the Union player opted for a semi-bold move. He decided to hold part of the town, so he's deployed the brigades of Devon and Gamble, Meredith and Cutler in the town and across the sunken road. Now there's a rule that says if you're going to come in line of sight of an enemy unit, your hidden movement status is lost. So these units coming up the pike here have lost their hidden movement status and have deployed. Meanwhile, units that were coming up from the rear here are still in their hidden movement status. So the Union have bolstered their line, and on turn 5 the Confederates will have some decisions again to make. Do they assault the units in the town, or again, decisions to make. Let's catch the action on turn 5. I almost forgot about the units of Rowley and Stone that were coming in on the Fairfield Road here. They come in almost in the Confederate rear, so I brought them on, and they're in their hidden movement status. But that could be an embarrassment to the Confederate right. So let's go back to turn 5, the Confederates. Okay, the Confederates roll a 4 for their command roll, and that helps the Union player, because that means the Confederate Army's in the passive state, and means they can't enter enemy zones of control, and they can't create hidden movement units, that kind of thing. So it's going to be a bit of a lull for the Confederates there. So maybe they better see about protecting their right flank. So we'll pick up the action after the Confederates have moved their new units and their line there on Seminary Ridge. Okay, as I'm discovering in the game, the Army stance is quite important. So I've pulled back the Confederate right here a bit, just in case the Union gets a good aggressive roll and rolls up my right flank. So that's quite important. Also, I see the stance certainly affects units coming on the board. Since they can't use the hidden movement status, they've got to come on in column, paying 1 to come on and 2, 3, 4, so on. And that will cause this column to be slowed down. So the Army state is quite important in this game. That's one thing I really like about it. You don't have full control over your units. Alright, so we're going to pick up the action turn 5, Union. What kind of roll do they get, and what can they do? Okay, turn 5, and the Union command die roll. And he gets a 4, which is equal to the panic state, which is not good. Well, he's not good for the Union. So the Confederate player will roll 1 die to see how many potential units he'll be able to command. He rolls a 3. So when the Union player moves, the Confederate player can try to attempt to move or take control of 3 units. So we'll have to take the Union move very carefully. Let's see what they can do. Okay, that was a semi-exciting turn for the Union. The Confederate got command of 2 of the Union troops from the 11th Corps, so they got a little bit bold this time and decided to move these guys back. Meanwhile, the reinforcements came up the Tawnytown Road, and the Union extended their line southwest of the town, and the units that were coming in on the flank sort of attached themselves to the Union left. So now we have a very, very strong Union line, and this isn't looking like the real Battle of Gettysburg at all. It's turn 5, we haven't even seen any fighting yet, and this is quite different. We'll see how the Confederates get out of this one. It's turn 6 for the  Rolling for the Confederate command, turn 6. They roll a 10, which is finally good for Lee. That's no restrictions at all. So the Confederates may attack. Although what they would attack, I have no idea, because they've got quite a strong Union line there. So let me move all the Confederate units, and let's see if our first attack goes in. Well, Lee figures that Union line is just too powerful, and I think it is. So the Confederates have deployed opposite the Union line. The units are still coming up the Chambersburg Pike, but now we have a new division. Early is coming down the Harrisburg Road. So finally the Confederates might be able to bring enough numbers to bear for an attack next turn. This is a really unusual game for me, in that there's been no combat and we're approaching turn 7. Anyway, let's see what the Union can do for turn 6. I wonder if they can even do a counterattack. Let's see. Okay, Meade rolls a 5, which still means he's in the the passive mode actually. So no entering zones of control for the Union player. So he will not be doing a counterattack. So I'll move the Union troops, and we'll pick up the action after they've moved. They should be able to shore up that line pretty nice now. Okay, Meade's army might be in the passive state, but they're certainly no cowards. They're getting kind of aggressive. They're holding the town of Gettysburg and extending their left almost beyond the Confederate right. So very interesting chess-like game going on here. Something's going to have to break. So we'll be doing turn 7 of the Confederates. Okay, Lee rolls an 8, which is within his command range, and that means he's in the restricted mode, which means he will not be able to enter zones of control of any infantry units. So there can be really no attacks this turn, which they might not have contemplated anyway. I think the Confederates are going to want to just shore up their line. Let's see what the action is like after the Confederates move for turn 7. Okay, that's the situation after the Confederates have moved for turn 7. You can see them coming up on their right, opposite the Union left. Perhaps going to try to envelop it there. They're opposite the Union line in the town. And Jenkins' Cavalry Brigade, which is using its hidden movement status, is coming over here. And Early is starting to overlap the Union right. So something's got to break soon, I would think. Let's see what the Union can do for turn 7. Boy, this battle of maneuver continues. The Union redeploys this line again, extending its right and extending its left. Still in a defensive stance. Not one single combat here, and it's turn 7. So something's got to crack soon. So we'll be doing turn 8 of the Confederates. Let's see what happens. Okay, Lee himself has come onto the field now with some reinforcements. Let's see what his command control die roll is. He rolls a 9, which is in the attack state, so we finally might see an attack by the Confederates on the line here. So I'll pick up the action after I've moved all the Confederates. So I hope we do see a combat soon. It's been kind of a little bit of a dull maneuver game here. Let's see what happens. Okay, that's the situation after the Confederates have moved, but not resolved combat. So we're going to have combats all the way down the line, as you can see. Probably not the best odds, because the Union will have some advantages in the town, but they are attacking pretty well all down the line. Now, I've been reading the support and bombardment rules and stuff like that, and it's going to be interesting. So I'll do one attack at a time, beginning over here on Benner's Hill. As the rules mention, all combats are always one brigade against one brigade, even though there might be 2 in the defending hex. In this one, we've got Hoke's brigade attacking Cutler, and the hills make no difference here, nor will this Jones artillery unit, because the Jones artillery unit moved, and you can only move or fire, not both. So we've got 5 against 4, so Hoke will be attacking on the +1 table. I'll roll the die, see what happens. Okay, that first result does not do too well to General Hoke, and he gets a D result. So you mark that brigade with a D, and that combat's over. So the next result will be Smith's brigade attacking Krzyzanowski across Rock Creek. And Creek hex sides give you no advantage in this game. Okay, so we've got 5 against 4 again. Again, it'll be another +1 attack. Let's see what the Confederates roll. Okay, that combat resulted in an 8, which is a DR result, which means the defender is disrupted, but he also has to make a rout check. He rolls 1 die. If he gets higher than his morale of 4, he would rout. Let's see what Krzyzewski gets. He rolls 4, which is equal, so he's okay. So he's merely marked with a disrupted marker. And you can see what the effect of disruption is. It's -2 to your attack and -1 to your defense. And on to the third attack, which will be Hayes against Meredith. And that's a 6 against a 5. That's another +1 combat. Let's see what happens with this famous contest. Okay, the Confederates got a very good roll on that one. They actually ended up routing Meredith. Routing is serious in this game. He's actually removed from the board and placed over in the routed box over here. Now, I forget if there's chances of him coming back or not. I suppose there is. And so Hayes has made a breakthrough. I'll see about advancing there. Yes, Hayes can advance, and might be a tad risky, but he's going to advance into the square. Now we've got Daniel versus Ames, and this is a horse of a different color because Ames is going to get the advantage of defending in the town. So we've got a 5 versus a 3, nominally +2, but now it will be +1 again. Daniel versus Ames. Let's roll the die. Okay, Ames held off that attack and ended up disrupting the Confederate unit. So Ames did very well against Daniel. We'll mark that. Next combat will be Gordon versus Smith. We have a 6 fighting 4, +2 nominally, really +1 because of the defense of the town. Let's see what happens here. Okay, the Confederates didn't roll good enough there. They got a 6, which disrupts them again. They're having a hard time busting this line. Alright, over here in the corner, we've got 2 brigades fighting Coster. Now, there's a coordination roll, so the Confederates have to roll for coordination to see if these 2 brigades coordinate their attack. Let me just check the rules on that. Okay, I've checked the coordination rules, and the Confederate has to roll 1 die, which he does, and he compares that to the coordination number, which is on the Army counter. In Lee's case, it's a 4. So if he got less than that, the attack is coordinated. Now, unlike other games, you just don't add up the Confederate brigades and away you go. The brigades always go in 1 brigade at a time, always. But because it is a coordinated attack, this first attack will be able to add 1 to the dice. So we've got 4 on 4, nominally a 0, but you've got the town, so it's a -1 attack, but they will be able to add 1 to the dice. Okay, they got a D4 result, and I'm wondering if I did that combat correctly the first time. Anyway, it says D4, and if that 4 is higher than the morale of the defending unit, it must retreat and is shaken. So O'Neill did drive Coster. I'll look up the retreats now to see how far they go back. Okay, checking the rule, the retreats are 1 hex. Coster does go back here, and O'Neill decides to advance. So we have another attack here. This is a little bit different because we've got a supporting artillery unit this time. Let me just check to see how that works. Yeah, what happens is the artillery subtracts its defensive support rating from the combat differential. In this case, Osborne has a 2. So you've got 5 attacking the 4 +1, but you've got to take -2. So we've got really, what, a -1 attack going in there against Schimmelpfennig. Let's see how that goes. Okay, that attack didn't go in too well for the Confederates. They got an AER result, which means, well, they have to do an elimination check and are routed. So I'll do those checks and we'll pick up the action. Okay, so Davis's brigade has to do an elimination check. So he has to roll 1 die, and if he gets greater than 4, the unit's eliminated. Not too good. And he rolls a 2, so he's not eliminated, but I believe he is routed. And let me just check that, and we'll pick up the action after I check that rule. Okay, the unit has to check to see if he's shaken. Again, he rolls a die, and if it gets greater than 4, he's shaken. He is shaken. I've got to find out what the repercussions of that are. Okay, checking the rules, it doesn't really say what shaken does. It says the unit is shaken, and doesn't tell what the effect is, though it specifically says the unit does not retreat because it was the attacker. So I guess nothing else happens, which is a little bit weird. I guess the Confederates got unlucky in the attack, but lucky in their elimination roll. Okay, so we have another attack going in here. This will be Pettigrew's brigade, which is 5, against von Gilsa, which is 3. So we start out +2. Then we have the -3. So we have another -1 attack going in. Let's see what the results are. -1. We've got a 6. That results in an A result, which is the attacker is disrupted. So the attacks are not going very well down the line here. Brigade on brigade is not too good. Okay, now we've got Archer's brigade attacking Paul's brigade. So we've got 5 on 5 is 0. -3 attack, this will not be good. -3 with a 7 is an AE, so that's the attacker checking for elimination again. So Archer will have to roll a die. If he gets greater than 4, he's eliminated. And he rolled a 1, so he's not. Wow, those were rough. Alright, so that's the end of the combat phase. And it's actually the Union turn next, so it'll be quite different with the Union artillery in primary range. I believe they'll be able to bombard at point blank or do some support counterattacks. Let me just check the rules again. Now I should point out before I move the Union that there was a counterattack rule, although in this case I wouldn't have counterattacked anyway. Whenever an advancing unit advances into the hex, the defender has the ability to counterattack. But here I wouldn't have counterattacked through the town, so I won't consider that. But let's look at the Union command roll first, see what they get, and see what their options are. So they roll a 5, which is below Meade's command range, which means he's in the restricted or in the passive state. Now I'll have to look up the rules to see what happens when you're in the passive state but still in zones of control. This could get interesting. Okay, checking the rules for the passive state. Units that are already beside enemy units can remain and counterattack, but no new units may come in. So I'll examine the situation down the line and see if the Union wants to pull out or counterattack. Okay, the Union player decided to play it safe. He didn't need to engage the Confederates all down the line, so he decided to pull back. Now, checking the rules, if a unit begins its turn adjacent to an enemy unit, it can only move 1 square, 1 hex. So the Union have fallen back very gradually along the front here, and now they've got elements of the 5th Corps coming up and elements of the 3rd Corps coming up. So the Union has the situation well in hand. He's in front of Cemetery Hill. He's going to have good defensive ground for the battle in the future, and I don't think the Confederates are going to be able to make much headway. So we'll go on to turn 9 and see what the Confederates can do. Okay, the Confederates rolled a 7, which is still within Robert E. Lee's command range, which is 6 to 8. That still means they're in the restricted state, and that means they can't enter infantry zones of control unless they already have units adjacent, which they don't. So there will be no aggressive moves by the Confederates this turn. I'm not sure they would want to anyway. So I'll do the Confederate move here, and we'll catch the action after I've moved the Confederates for turn 8. Okay, that's the Confederate dispositions after they've moved on turn 9. Actually following very much the historical lines, which is really weird. There's been very, very little combat in this particular game, almost none, and yet the armies are ending up in almost exactly the positions they did historically. The Confederates are extending their right, and they've got tons of reinforcements coming up there from the rear. And the Union has a fairly stable line in front of Cemetery Hill. So the Union will move for turn 9. So there's only one more turn of daylight left. Then I'll do the conclusion of the first day's battle, make a few comments, and we'll see how this goes. So the Union will be moving now, doing their command roll. So Meade rolls, and he rolls a 6, which is below his command range, which means he's going to be in the passive state, which means the Union will not be counterattacking, not that they would anyway, but they'll certainly stabilize their line and strengthen it now. Let's see how that goes. We'll pick up the action after we've moved the Union for turn 9. Okay, that's the situation after the Union have moved for turn 9. They certainly have a very formidable line all the way down, following pretty well the historical lines, as I mentioned. They're in front of Cemetery Hill. They have a solid line, and they've only had one single unit removed from the map, and that was the routed unit of Meredith. So it's looking pretty good for the Union. Very stable. And we'll go on to the last turn of the day, turn 10. We'll see what the Confederates can do against this formidable line. Okay, for their command die roll, the Confederates roll a 6, which means they're going to be in the passive state, which means there will be no attacking. So the Gettysburg battle for the first day is virtually over. Still, I'll move the Confederates, and we'll do a summation of the first day. Okay, I didn't have to do very much with the Confederates. I extended their right flank down past the peach orchard and brought up units to the rear, just stabilized and made their line formidable all the way along. Now for the Union, I'll roll for them and move them, but there's really nothing they have to do. Their line is completely stable. All they'll have to do really is move these units that are coming up the peach orchard to extend their left. But let's see what their die roll is and see what they can do. Maybe Meade can make it a counterattack if he wants. Meade rolls a 6, which again is below his command range, which means he's going to have to play passively, which means they'll be just virtually in defense. So I'll just move these peach orchard units and we'll examine the battlefield and see what's what. Okay, that's after the Union is moved. All I did was move the units that were at the peach orchard, deployed them in line, extending the left. And there we have the solid Union line up Gettysburg Road, through partially the town and over Rock Creek, and totally stable. So I'll look at the situation, see what the points would be, see what routed units there are, and do a summary. Okay, I've just gone over the rules, and not a single point has been scored, not one, because we have no eliminated units. Now, the trains for both armies arrive in the night, and it's only through the train units do you get routed and eliminated units back. So this game is far from over. We have virtually a totally intact Union army north of town and west of Cemetery Hill, and we have a totally intact Confederate army almost exactly in their historical positions as they were on the evening of July 1st. So this game is far from over. But I'll conclude the video now. I don't know if I'll be doing a part 2 or not, because I have to take this game down. But I will make a few comments. I haven't seen a game like this in a while where there was no combat at all. This is, like I said, one of my favorite Gettysburg games. I like the way it plays. I like the way the interaction of the units. I'm a little concerned about the combat results. The combat results table is not explained very well. But as we can see, it gives historical results. Most of the armies are intact. You know, you're not removing brigades every 2 minutes. So it's quite a game. Now I'll just take an overall shot here of the map to give you an idea of the positions, and we'll conclude the video. So there's the positions on the evening of July 1st. You can see the Union has done very, very well. And I can see that the command control levels in this game are extremely important. So that's it for Gettysburg, Lee's Greatest Gamble. I hope you enjoyed the replay.